With this video, I begin another phase of my series on books that stick in my head. I've talked about the work of James Jordan, who has been by far the most influential thinker and Bible scholar on my own approach to Scripture and my own theology. We did several videos on John Frame's work, Reformed theologian who's developed a tri-perspectival approach to theology that I found very valuable. With this episode, and for the next several videos, I'm going to be talking about my doctoral supervisor, John Milbank, and the movement that he inspired, which is called Radical Orthodoxy. And I'm going to focus particularly on one book of John Milbank's. He's written a number of significant books. Theology and Social Theory was his first major work. That's the one I'm going to focus on. That's the one I know best and the one that I think is most valuable generally for understanding radical orthodoxy, for understanding his contributions to Christian theology. But he's written a book on Aquinas. He's written a book on being given, which is an ontology of the gift. He's supposed to have another forthcoming book on gifts. He's written on Henri de Lubac and the supernatural debate. He's a poet who has published a couple volumes of poetry. He writes on ontology. He co-authored a book on post-liberal politics called The Politics of Virtue. So Milbank has written on a wide range of topics, several books, but dozens and dozens of significant essays on a variety of topics. And he inspired by his work a movement that was started in Cambridge and started among British Anglicans and Anglo-Catholics called Radical Orthodoxy. And I think to get the flavor of Radical Orthodoxy, it's helpful for me to read at least part of the opening paragraph of Milbank's work, Theology and Social Theory. I don't usually read things on these videos. I'm going to look down at my paper and I'm going to read the opening paragraph. This is John Milbank from the book Theology and Social Theory. The pathos of modern theology is its false humility. For theology, this must be a fatal disease because once theology surrenders its claim to be a meta-discourse, it can no longer articulate the word of the Creator God, but is bound to turn into oracular voice of some finite idol, such as historical scholarship, humanist psychology, or transcendental philosophy. If theology no longer seeks to position, qualify, or criticize other discourses, then it is inevitable that these discourses will position theology, for the necessity of an ultimate organizing logic cannot be wished away. He's trying to reestablish theology as what the medievals called the queen of the sciences. It's the discourse, it's the discipline that arranges and organizes and positions all other discourses. That's been lost in modern theology. Milbank calls that's what he means by the false humility. Theologians have said, we're going to confine ourselves to strictly theological topics and not talk about politics, not talk about economics, not talk about ontology, not talk about aesthetics. We're going to leave those to the specialists in other disciplines. Milbank sees that as a defection from the purposes of Christian theology. Christian theologians seek to apply and articulate the word of the Creator God, as Milbank says. And that applies to everything because the Creator God has spoken to everything. And so the Christianity embodies and incorporates all of these different disciplines. Theology criticizes and positions all these other discourses. It's the overarching discourse that positions all other discourses. And it has its own internal understanding in this book, particularly of politics and society and economics, that doesn't depend on, it can draw on, but it doesn't depend on discourses from other disciplines. It doesn't depend on insights from other disciplines because it has its own vision of society that's built into it. The things that attracted me to this vision were Milbank is at war with the idea of neutrality. There is no such thing as neutrality. That's a theme that I picked up very, very early in my theological development from Cornelius Van Til, from the Reconstructionists, from others who were in the Van Tillian tradition. Like the Reconstructionists, Milbank and Radical Orthodoxy have this vast vision of how Christian thought should operate. He and his followers have tried to apply Christian theology to basically every area of academic life. That's where they focused. They haven't been particularly practical in their focus, but they've tried to apply Christian theology and try to rethink even the basic structures of other disciplines from the viewpoint of Christian theology. So what attracted me to Milbank in the first place was the commonalities that he had with some movements within Neo-Calvinism and Van Tillian perspectives on things. Much of what I'm going to say in the next several videos is going to be positive about Milbank's project. And so I want to say at the beginning that at a number of places I differ pretty strongly, very strongly, with Milbank. Milbank and his radical orthodoxy followers are Christian Platonists. I am not a Platonist. James K.A. Smith, in his book on radical orthodoxy, that's one of the points that he focuses on and critiques, is the Platonism that's inherent in much of the radical orthodox work. I disagree with Milbank's work on that. Milbank is what he calls a Christian socialist. I'm not a socialist. What Milbank means by that is, I think the easiest summary is that what Milbank means is that societies should prioritize social relations, families, neighborhoods, healthy social life. That should be prioritized above sheer economic increase. That's what he means by socialist. So he denies that he's a state socialist who believes that the state should be running the economy. There is a tradition of Christian socialism in Anglicanism that differs from the socialism that you find in the Soviet Union, for example, or in most communist countries, which is a top-down, state-directed economy. So Milbank tries to distance himself from that sort of socialism. It's hard for me to see how the socialism that he advocates can operate apart from in a very intrusive state. He's an advocate, for example, of just prices. How do you get just prices if you don't have some public authority that's determining prices and it's not being left to the market? So I don't agree at all with Milbank's overall socialist. I think he has some insights there, but I'm not a socialist. I don't agree with that perspective. Milbank I also disagree with Milbank on sexual issues. Milbank has been a defender of marriage and a critic of gay marriage. He doesn't think that marriage should be adjusted. Being an Anglo-Catholic, he thinks of marriage as a sacrament. He doesn't think it should be adjusted to accommodate gay unions. But he, on the other hand, thinks that civil unions of gay people should be legal. He doesn't think there's any moral problem with gay sex, with homosexual sex. I disagree very profoundly with him about that. I think it's clear from Scripture not only that we shouldn't have gay marriage, but that homosexual desire and homosexual activity is condemned by God. Romans 1 is very clear on this, and I commend to you Tim Gallant's book on idolatry and homosexuality in Romans 1, which is a Theopolis explorations volume, which lays this out very clearly. So I disagree very strongly with Milbank on that point. And then one last point, I could probably find many others. One last point where I disagree with Milbank is that he is a universalist. He's universal. I think of universalist. I think of the type that David Bentley Hart has been. He believes in hell, but he doesn't believe hell is a permanent state. He thinks eventually hell is much more like a purgation, state of purgation, and in the end, all will be saved. I disagree very strongly with Milbank on that point. In spite of these disagreements, I've found Milbank very, very useful on a lot of topics, and particularly Theology and Social Theory, which is what I'm going to be talking about in the next several videos, is one of those books that lives in my head and has formed some of my basic instincts as a theologian and as a writer.